All right, guys, let's talk corn. It's March. It's time to plant corn here in Zone 9A, and we need to understand a few things before we get the corn planted. Welcome to the channel, Green Thumb, Black Thumb. I'm Black Thumb Karen. Have you ever planted 2 or more varieties of corn and got gorgeous, beautiful ears of corn only to have them not be so sweet or be maybe even a little mealy? Well, there's a reason for that, and it's unique to grains like corn. I think a lot of gardeners don't typically grow corn because they think it's hard to grow and they make a couple of critical mistakes. One of those mistakes is not understanding what can go wrong if you plant 2 varieties of corn next to each other, and the other one is just the needs of the corn plant itself as it grows. So I understand quite a bit about corn as I used to grow it at work a lot, and I grew it super well there and everything went fantastically, made genetic crosses, so on and so forth. But bringing those skills home has been a little bit of a different story. Not sure why they don't transfer to home, but I do have a hard time growing it at home. It may have something to do with this being a little bit on the dark side. So we're going to grow corn together this season, and we're going to grow beautiful corn together. So let's go. So before we plant our corn, there's a couple of things we need to understand about it. Please bear with me on this. I know some of you may get glazy-eyed, and I promise you I'll try to make this as interesting as I can, but we need to understand a little bit about the anatomy of the corn kernel and a little bit about its genetics. So corn isn't like other fruits and vegetables that we're used to eating. And that's because the part of the corn that we're enjoying when we eat is different from most fruits that we usually eat. So let's understand the makeup of what the kernel of corn really is. Kernel of corn gets a special name called a caryopsis. Why is that? Because the corn kernel is really a fusion of the fruit and the seed together, and we eat the entire thing. So let's discuss what we're enjoying when we eat something like a tomato. When we eat a tomato or other berries like that, we're really eating and enjoying a swollen ovary. That is all maternal tissue. It has nothing to do with what pollinates the seed that is inside the tomato. But with corn, what pollinates the corn does affect the part that we like to enjoy eating, and it affects it directly and dramatically. That's because when we eat a corn kernel, the part of the kernel that we're eating is fertilized tissue. It is half mom, half dad, and will be affected by both the mom genes and the dad genes. So what is this fertilized tissue that we're eating? Isn't the fertilized tissue just the egg from the mom seed and the pollen from the male coming together to make a zygote that will grow into an embryo, which will grow into a plant? Well, yeah, that is definitely fertilized tissue, but that is not what we're enjoying eating when we eat corn. What we're enjoying eating when we eat corn is a little tissue inside that is fertilized called the endosperm. So yeah, plants are super weird. They do 2 fertilizations, one for the egg and one for the tissue that will feed the embryo once that egg is fertilized. So the endosperm is responsible for feeding the growing embryo inside the corn kernel. The endosperm is filled with a bunch of starch and a little bit of protein. For example, another kind of seed that we like to eat the endosperm from is the coconut. When we enjoy that white, meaty, sweet goodness inside a coconut, that's really its endosperm. And the outer shell is the seed coat. That big woody husky part that's usually removed when you buy your coconut from the store, and that's nice that they do that because it's hard to take off. But that big woody part that you see around the coconut when you see it up on the tree, that's actually the fruit. That's maternal tissue. So how does the pollen of one variety of corn affect the endosperm of another variety of corn? Well, welcome to the world of sweet corn. Sweet corn does not equal sweet corn. So what exactly makes sweet corn different than field corn or popcorn? Well, it's sweet for starters, but field corn is the kind of corn that is filled with lots and lots of starch. It's generally used for animal feed and ethanol production. And popcorn, well, it's used for popping and eating and making yummy snacks. But these kernels are bred specifically for the characteristics that make them good at what they do. So is sweet corn. But sweet corn is its own critter. So there's genes in corn that are responsible for turning sugar into starch as the corn kernel matures. And these genes in the sweet corn are delayed. And so they don't turn those sugars into starch as quickly as they normally should. So that leaves the corn with an increased sugar content. Have you ever gone to the store, bought a pack of sweet corn, and you pull these seeds out and you're like, how in the world can that grow? Why is it all shrivelly like that? Well, this is a shrunken 2 kernel. And the reason these sweet corns shrink like this when they dry down is because they are so full of sugar and water that when they dry down, the sugar can't support the structure. It's just, a small molecule. It can't support the structure, and so it shrivels down like that when it dehydrates. But it's fine. But for this reason, you don't want to plant these things too deep. They recommend about a 1/2 inch down. I plant mine about a 1/4 inch down, a little bit shallower, because they only have so much energy to be able to break the surface of the soil. So if they were full of starch, you could plant them deeper because they could go longer before running out of energy. But yeah, so that is your typical sweet corn seed. So this one here is one of those glass gem seeds. See how it's smooth and beautifully shaped? More like what you expect to see when you're looking at a kernel of corn. And the reason it looks so beautiful and its shape is so perfect is because it is chock full of starch. And that starch can support the structure of the corn when it dries down and loses its water. Okay, and here is a popcorn seed. And again, it's smooth and it kind of looks like what you expect. But you notice popcorn seeds tend to be a little smaller, more teardrop shaped. Popcorn seeds are bred for the type of starch that they have in there. The starch in it is kind of more of a jelly-like consistency, and it holds just the right amount of water so that when you heat it up, that water will turn into steam and it'll burst the kernel. And since the starch is jelly-like, it holds together instead of atomizing everywhere. So it's just cool. The whole breeding industry is just really cool. When it comes to sweet corn, there are 3 major categories of sweet corn. The genes that are responsible for delayed production of starch are given special names. The first one that was discovered is SU1, otherwise known as sugary. And the second one is called SE for sugar enhanced. And the third one is called SH2 or shrunken. And that one is the sweetest of them all. You may see these initials on seed packets when you're in the store. Sometimes they go by a special name like super sweet or double sweet. Okay, so I pulled out some corn packets here to show you what you might see when you go to the store. I just planted this one a little while ago. It says double sweet. That tells me it's an SE variety. Over here, this one flat out says it's an SE variety, sugar enhanced. Over here, I don't see any SE, SUs, or SH2s on here, but I do see that it says super sweet. That tells me it's an SH2 type corn. This glass gem corn, on the other hand, is not a sweet corn. It's gorgeous, and it's grown just because it's so pretty. But it is definitely not a sweet corn. Over here, this is Japanese hullus, and it is a popcorn. So as we discussed earlier, each of these genes is responsible for converting the sugar into starch. And they work at different rates, and they work by a little bit different mechanisms. But the SU1 or the sugary type corns, they have really no storing capacity. When they're ready to eat, they're ready to eat, and you have about a day to enjoy them at their best. Okay, that's because they make about 10% sugar, and that sugar rapidly within hours starts getting converted into starch. So it's a little bit delayed, but it's not a lot. But it is tender, it is sweet, it's good. The SE, or sugar enhanced, converts sugar into starch at the same rate that the SUs do, but it makes a bit more sugar, so it takes longer for it to convert that sugar into starch. So you may have up to about 5 days with that one. But the SH2 is a little different, the shrunkens. They are full of sugar. They're up to about 30% sugar. So when you grow those, you can pick them, throw them in the fridge. You'll have up to about 10 days to enjoy them at their sweetest and their best. There's advantages and disadvantages to each type of corn. The SE type corns you'll see all over the place in the store a lot. And one of its advantages is because it has a very thin skin surrounding the whole corn kernel. So when it's full of sugar and ready to eat, when you put it in your mouth, it'll pop like a little popping boba, and it's a really nice mouthfeel. It's a great taste. The Shrunken 2, on the other hand, while it's sweeter, it has more sugar. The skin on the outside is a little bit thicker, so you don't quite get that popping boba sensation quite as well as you do with the sugar enhanced. So the genes responsible for the delay of sugar into starch in each of these types of corn are different genes. So if you mix and match, for example, a sugary 1 or an SE with a Shrunken 2, you're going to probably get some pretty unpleasant corn that's going to be starchy, maybe a little mealy, not very sweet. So it's important that we understand the genetics of the corn when we're growing it. I've created this animation which shows an egg with a mutant shrunken sweet corn gene and a wild-type corn sperm with no mutation. When they come together to form a seed, the dominant wild-type gene will override the recessive sweet gene and the seed will be starchy. Next, we have a mutant shrunken sweet gene in the egg and a mutant shrunken sweet gene in the sperm. They are the same mutation and match. When they come together, they will produce a sweet seed. Now we have an SU1 egg and an SU1 sperm. They are the same sweet gene mutation, so again, when they come together, they will make a sweet seed. Last, we have a shrunken mutation egg and an SU1 mutation sperm. Both are sweet gene mutants, but they are different genes. Neither has a match, so when they pair, it is like they're paired with a wild-type non-mutated dominant gene, and all the seeds will be starchy. For the commercial industry, these differences are super important, and for the breeders, they are so good at what they do. And honest to Pete, just growing corn, developing corn, the farmers that grow it and understand it, y'all, you need to appreciate them. They're so good at what they do. So just because these corns have different genes that are responsible for the conversion of sugar to starch in different ways, doesn't mean that you can't grow more than one variety of corn in a single season. Because, I mean, look at, I'm growing 3 different varieties of corn with 3 very different backgrounds. So there's several different ways you can handle growing different varieties of corn with different genetic backgrounds. One way is to physically separate them. Now, since corn is wind pollinated, when you physically separate them from each other, you need to kind of keep them far apart. For me, I have one of my corns in the front yard, one of them in the backyard, and another one that's kind of in the side, sort of protected away from both of them. And this way, I know that they're really low likelihood of cross-pollinating. The other way you can do this is temporally. Separate them by time. If you know your last frost date, you can start growing one of your sweet corn varieties in starter trays or in starter cups, and about 3 weeks ahead of your last frost date. Then with the other one, you want to direct sow it at the same time you're transplanting the other ones. So they've got about a 3-week separation. That way you know when the tassels of the first variety of corn come up, the tassels are what have the pollen, that they're not going to pollinate your other variety of corn because it hasn't even made any silks or female flower parts to be pollinated yet. So that's another way you can do it. One thing you want to pay attention to if you're separating your corn by time and if they're kind of relatively close to each other is that when one variety of corn, your first variety, is done tasseling and the pollens rain down on the silks on its own plants, you're going to want to cut those tassels off to make sure that there isn't a chance of a little bit of the pollen from that might still be in there that might cross-pollinate and contaminate your second variety of corn when it starts to grow up just a couple of weeks later. And that's just if you want to be really anal and really safe about it, that's a good thing to do. We call that emasculating the plant. So the big take-home message, y'all, here is if you're uncomfortable with the idea of growing more than one variety of corn, then just grow one variety of corn. That way you can't possibly have any genetic mess-ups at all. And all you have to do is pay attention to how you're growing your corn. That is another video for another time.